Hello and welcome to the Healing Insight podcast, episode 33, with me, Sarah Hunt.
And me, Jez Hunt.
Hello and welcome, everybody. It's great to be here again. We are now on episode 33. Hi, Jay, and how are you today?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Yes, it's great to be back. These weeks seem to fly by until we're doing the next recording, but absolutely loving it, and it's good to get positive feedback about the episodes we're doing as well, as we've had some positive feedback today as well.
We've had some very positive feedback, and it's great to get that feedback. So, anyone that's listening, if you want to give us feedback, then please do just by emailing one of us. That would be fabulous.
And
Um,
just sorry, before you carry on, just reference
no,
there. Even if it's negative feedback, it is only feedback. If something doesn't resonate with you that we've said, then please share that with us. And, be delighted to actually have a conversation with you if that's going to help. So yeah.
absolutely. Yes. We're open to any kind of feedback. Well, any, I'd say. Um, that constructive is what I want to say.
Yeah,
So because if there's anything we can do to improve, or if there's anything that we can do that will help you all on your healing journey, then please let us know, because that's what we're here for, really, is to help you in some way, to inspire you in some way on your healing journey to heal on another level.
indeed.
Um, so yeah, definitely open to feedback. Okay, so today we thought we'd look at balance.
Balance.
Yeah, balance, and an interesting topic, really, and probably something that a lot of people don't have a lot of at times. I know that certainly there have been various times in my life where I've not had a lot of work-life balance. Um, and probably not a lot of balance in everything in my everyday life. Um, and balance isn't, to me, it isn't just about work-life balance and balance in every area of your life, but it's also about bringing body, mind, and spirit, or body, mind, and soul into balance, so that you can be your true, authentic self and really reach your potential.
Mm. Yeah. Oh,
Some
okay.
silence.
Over to me. No. I'm feeling. I'm just allowing what's come up from what you've just said to percolate a little bit. Um, for those of you that
You can
remember,
tell he's a coffee lover.
percolation isn't just about coffee, as it happens. Um, yeah, I think it can be very easy to get over passionate about anything and not so. So okay, so we talk about balance, and people, you've mentioned work-life balance. Let's start with that one. That people can be either very focused on work and not spend enough time with friends, family, relationships, partner, whatever, or they could be too focused on friends, family, partnership, and not focused on work if they're working. So we talk about work-life balance of getting something that works at both levels, so you're still being productive at work and moving forwards from a work point of view, but also connecting and establishing a relationship and your family commitments or your personal commitments as well. And actually, that's pretty much how the universe works. We talked, I mentioned before, about the law of duality. So we have opposites, and they're there to balance us. So light, dark, left, right, up, down, backwards, forwards, in, out. That's kind of how the universe works anyway. There is always a balance. And it's when we get out of balance. So if we're struggling with feelings of stress, often it's because our energy internally is out of balance. So balance is, in my mind and my understanding, is absolutely core to everything that we experience. And it's when we're out of balance that we feel out of sorts. And that can be euphoric if we're out of balance too much in a happy, positive sort of way, or it could be at the opposite end of depression and things if we're out of balance too much at the other end of the spectrum. So that's,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and when you're out of balance, you tend to move into a react mode rather than be in a respond mode as well, don't you? It's kind of because you're not in proper balance, you're not looking at things from a heart-centered space. It's easy if you're out of balance, you end up stressed, you end up in your head, and then you've moved away from being in your heart and following what your heart wants you to do and your soul wants you to do, so that you stay in a happy, balanced state.
yeah, it's, but sometimes we don't know what our heart wants. um, and that can be because it will be because we're too in our head, but that can be because of the experiences going on around us that are affecting us in whatever way, that are influencing the way we are. So if something happens that we react to, we are reacting to an external experience, to something that's happening outside of us that we are taking on to us. Does that make sense? You're looking a bit puzzled. Maybe I'm not. Okay, let's see if I can.
No, so I'm trying to process it,
That's
but
okay. So quite often we live a life of outside in. So we
yes,
spend a lot of time, we can spend a lot of time, we don't always, but we can spend a lot of time reacting or responding to things that happen externally to us, external to us.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Whereas the way our brain works, my understanding is the brain works inside out. So the life we experience is based on the thoughts we have and the consciousness we have around those thoughts, and then how we express those thoughts externally.
yes,
This has gone really philosophical in a very
it
short
has.
space of time, and it's gone quite deep. So what I mean is, right, everything I do, everything I do has to start with a thought.
Hmm.
If I want to call you on Zoom, I don't just magically pick up my computer and press dial on Zoom out of the blue and all of a sudden you're there and I'm like, oh, hello. I have to think, I'm going to call you. I'm going to call Sarah. So I need to get my computer. So it all starts with a thought of some kind. Okay. So
Yeah.
therefore, any action. So if you sent me an email that upset me, there must be a thought before I react or respond to that. There must be something
Hmm.
that happens in my head before I take to that path of reaction or conscious decision to respond, to take that step back and respond to it. So we experience the life inside out, but we look at life outside in.
Yes.
Everyone worries about, okay, that's a generalization. Lots of people, in my experience, myself and other people, spend or have spent, until they have an understanding, a lot of time saying, oh, well, for example, oh, well, that's how life is. Well, that's what happens. Oh, well, there's nothing I can do about it. Because they're looking at external things to them. And yes, to a degree, they're right. They can't influence what somebody else does. We can only control, as we've talked about before, we can only control how we respond or react to something. We can control what we do in that circle of control, in that area that we are able to influence directly.
Hmm.
What somebody else says or does to us, we don't necessarily have any control over whatsoever in terms of what they do. but we can obviously control how we respond or react to that. But there has to be a thought. So before I react, if someone upsets me, there will be something, a thought, that links it to something that leads to either a reaction, if it's something that's triggered something. So getting angry in an argument, someone says something, there will be a thought in my head that links that back to me feeling angry in the past, or linking it back to a similar experience, which then says, that's anger, you're angry, whoosh, here comes the anger reaction. Or, whoa, that's anger. Oh, that's because it's a very similar thing to the past, but I know why this is happening now. So I'm going to take a step back and just leave it a minute and then look at how I need to respond to this. But it starts with a thought, which is inside out. Anything we do starts in here. Inside, there
Yes,
maybe not in the head. It could be intuition,
inside.
but inside.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
inside
Inside
out.
it starts. So I'm not so sure that it always starts in the head, but
No, okay.
um, but it probably does for a lot of people because we've been programmed to listen to our heads all the time rather than our hearts, and now we're moving back towards listening to our hearts. But even so, a memory of some sort can be triggered by something that's said or done
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it happens to be, and that puts us out of balance with ourselves. But I agree with you completely that we need to be living from the inside out and recognizing that everything comes from within.
Okay. So let's play with this a little bit. So if we look at intuition, how do people relate to intuition compared with a thought? So how do you know that it's intuition and not just a thought? It's actually being triggered by a memory or a past experience that you've had. Because the intuition could be based on, oh, this links with that. Ah, this is how to deal with it. Intuition. You intuitively know. But it still leads to a thought. At some point, we have to get to that
Yeah,
point of thinking about it. So it might
yeah,
not start with a thought. So I take that point and I absolutely I take that point and reflect on that. That so okay, it might be the intuition, but very quickly after there has to be some sort of thought before we take action. Very few people will respond intuitively without any form of thought prior to the action.
mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about auto responses like breathing and respiratory systems and
No, no, no,
circulatory
no.
systems and stuff like that. I'm talking about where we need to make a decision, whether it's react or respond, but we need to make a decision to take action. We don't naturally just take action.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I would agree with that, that a thought process comes into it, but I would say that often, and certainly when you have that awareness of the importance of feeling feeling things more, that it'll be the feeling that then triggers the thought if you're working from the heart.
So do our emotions and our feelings come from thought, or do they come first?
Bit of a chicken and egg, isn't it? I think it depends on the situation. Because feelings can be triggered because of past experiences, which may then put a thought into your head. Um, but equally, you can have a thought which would then trigger an emotion.
Yeah, because
So
if you think back to a
it's,
happy
chicken and
occasion,
egg,
you
isn't
can
it?
relive the happy experience and the happy emotions of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so then if we get if we get a feeling come up with, okay, so actually then, is a possible definition, if we're just trying to clarify, to make it so easy for people to grasp, that conscious thought is what we're talking about by thoughts, and unconscious thought is what we're talking about by intuition. Because our unconscious mind, we still have thoughts, but it's only when they manifest into the conscious mind that we become aware of them as thoughts.
Yeah. Um,
This is not gone anywhere near where I thought this was going to go today,
no,
but
it
hey,
hasn't, not at all. But do you, see, one of the things that with some of the work I've done with students over the last few months is don't think,
yes,
feel it, don't think. But then thought does come into it, as you say, because it has to. But it's about, to me, it's about, yeah, tuning into the subconscious, to that feeling, to that inner knowing, your intuition, to know whether something is right before you allow the head to take over. Does that make sense? Or in fact, you don't want the head to take over, because you don't want ego um, to be leading the way. Everything needs to come from the heart, but the thoughts need to be triggered from the heart rather than from the mind.
okay. So we are in the human experience, we are rational beings. We like to try and work things out. We like to think about things. So if we're so for us to take positive action and be in balance, going back to the point of the topic today, to be in balance, then if we want to do something, so let's say I want to, let's try to use an example from okay. So let's say I was looking for a job, okay, and I see a job online that or whatever, I see a job and I apply for it, okay. Then to put this in balance, it shouldn't just be a case of me looking at the job description, looking at my experience, linking the two together, writing a CV, writing a cover letter, and just sending it off, hoping that that's going to be the right job. There should be an element of me saying, okay, how do I feel about this job? So, yes, you've got the rational, have I got the qualifications? Have I got the experience they're asking for? Can I answer or tick the boxes that they are specifically asking for? But also, does this feel right? Because you might tick all the boxes, but that doesn't mean it's the right job for you. But vice
Yeah, absolutely.
versa, you you can't necessarily, or maybe not for this example. Maybe there are examples, I'm sure, where you can just follow your instinct and your intuition. But for this example, then it might feel like the right job, but you have to try and rationalize it, or we will naturally rationalize it of, do I have the right experience? Now, not having the right experience when you're applying for a job doesn't mean you won't get the job. It depends how you come across, what letter you put together, and if you get to an interview, if they see through something that you've said, that actually this person's. So it's not that you won't necessarily get the job, but you go through that process of thinking. So what I'm trying to say is that for balance, we end up, even if we're following our heart and our intuition and being heart led, there will still be, because we are in the human experience, there will still be an element of trying to rationalize what's going on, trying to make sense of it, trying to think it through.
Yes, I agree with you. However, I would
However, I like this. This is
however,
good. This is good.
however, what we need to be careful of is not being over analytical. Again, coming back to, we've been programmed in inverted commas to be in our heads, and that makes us go over things in our heads a lot. So we can be over analytical. And I would say in my younger days, I was very analytical. I needed to know the where's, why, fors, everything
Hmm.
with everything. And I needed to go back over it. And I would go over and over stuff. I don't anymore, not to the nth degree like I used to. But so when you're working from the heart, yes, you need to look at things. So, your example of a job, I would agree that I would want to look at the person spec that they're looking at. I would want to look at the qualifications and the experience they're looking at. But I would also be feeling,
Yeah.
is this job right for me? Is this company right for me? And will I get the development that I feel I need at this point in time? But this would be a feeling thing, having made a mental assessment, if you like, of what they're asking for.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? So I think it's really, again, it's about balance between feeling and thinking. We need to feel things. We need to feel, does this resonate with me? Does this feel right? When I've researched this company, do their ethics sit well with me? Do their mission statement, does that sit well with me? It's not just at looking at the job spec and the person spec. Um, and this is just an example. So it's more about looking at the whole picture, is what I want to say, so that you can see things. Because if you don't look at the whole picture of a situation, or as much of the picture that you can gain access to, then you can find yourself out of balance, because you're only looking at one section of it rather than looking at the whole.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so then you can end up not being in balance with things, because you've only looked at a small section of something and perhaps overanalyze that, rather than feeling it. Does it feel right? You know, what else do I need to look at that relates to this, that will help me to understand what's going on here, or whether this job is right for me, or whether this relationship is right for me, or whatever it might be. It's yeah, it's a balance. To me, again, it's about balance between the mind and the soul and the heart, so that you're not making all your decisions through your head. You're coming back into your heart. You're centering yourself and feeling, does this feel right? Because if it is right for you, then the universe will help you, and the synchronicities will happen that will allow you to move forward on that path. And if it isn't right because you're in your head and you've moved, then things won't work out in quite the way you would like them to.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So then, is there? I'm liking this one. This is good. Is there a case where purely by feeling, without rationalizing at all, it would be the right thing just to follow? So I know we hear about people that just followed their heart or whatever and just did
Mm.
something completely out of character, for other people would see it as out of character, and they've gone off and just taken a risk, I suppose some people might see it as, and yet it's turned out
Yeah,
exactly right because they were on purpose and it all synchronized
yeah.
together. But at some point, even if that was the case, wouldn't there be some form of balance of rationalization? I mean, you might weigh it up and you might still think, okay, I feel really uneasy about this, but I'm going to do it anyway because that's what my heart's telling me. But there would still need to be some balance of rational thought, wouldn't there?
I suppose it depends how far along the path you are with working from your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I've never really thought about it, to be honest, because I listen to my heart, and I do think about things a bit, but I do try and go with my heart with everything that I do these days. Um, but I do feel that it depends how. So if you're quite a way down the path of being in tune with your heart, listening to what your soul wants you to do, listening to your intuition, then there is probably thoughts that are going on, but you may not be as consciously aware of them as somebody that's only just moving along that path and is perhaps more in their head than their heart a lot of the time.
Yeah. Okay.
So they'll think about things more than somebody else who's really heart led and heart aware, who'll go, that feels right, right, I'll go with that. And there will have been a thought of, yeah, I'll go with that, but they probably won't have gone through the process of rationalization that other
Okay.
people might have done before they make their decision. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying, yes. However, to coin a phrase back at you. So if someone is following their heart, are they actually in balance then?
They should be.
So if they're not rationalizing things and they've got thoughts going on, but they're not consciously aware of them, are they truly in balance? So then it comes down to what is the definition of balance?
Balance.
So balance will mean different things to different people. So you talked about heart, soul, and mind being in balance.
Mm.
Then if you're heart led, then heart led, soul led, heart led should be in balance anyway. If the mind's in balance with that and you're being heart led, then the mind, to try and put this into words, should kind of be in that place of accepting that your heart feelings are correct. So your mind
Yes,
will, okay, so if that's then balance, then that flips on the head what I've been saying and asking. I mean, 'cause I'm doing this for discussion purposes
absolutely. Yeah.
of then if we go into rational thought, then that is putting us out of balance.
Yes.
So by thinking things
If we
through rather
rationalize
than,
too much, we're in our heads, aren't we? If we rationalize too much,
so if
we're
we're,
not in our hearts.
so by being in our heads, we're out of balance, is essentially what we're looking at here then. Because if you're in your head, not your heart, you're out of, you're not in your heart center. So therefore your mind, body and soul won't be in balance because you're in
Yeah.
your head. So therefore you're out of balance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you're in your head, you can't hear what your soul is telling you and what your heart is telling you is right for you. And this is where ego can get in the way.
So balance is about bringing heart, body, soul together, following your heart, following your feelings, your intuition, possibly rationalizing some of it with thought if it's appropriate to do so, but trusting that your feelings are going to be more in alignment of what is right for you than your thoughts, which we know, well, you and I both
Yes.
know that that is the case anyway, because our thoughts, I mean, thoughts are like Play-Doh or plasticine for those in the UK that are a bit more older. But we can think of, or we can model a dragon, or we can model a hero, or we can create a nightmare, or we can create a little happy scene. But at the end of the day, it's all still Play-Doh or all still plasticine.
Hmm.
And that's what we do with the mind. You know, we can create these big, scary situations, these big, scary environments, but they're just thoughts.
Yes, but I think it's also important to understand that our thoughts are energy and they can be very powerful. Um, and but really, we're meant to create everything from the heart as humans. That's what humans, and my understanding of humans,
Mm-hmm.
is that we create from the heart. So we create from feeling. So the mind comes into it because we wouldn't have a mind if we didn't need a mind. But but it's it we should be heart I shouldn't use the word check, but should. My understanding is that we need to be heart led. So the heart leads and the mind, as you explained really well a few minutes ago, um, comes into a place of acceptance that what we're feeling is correct for us, is right for us, is what needs we need to be going with. And the thing is, as soon as we go into our mind, we then start to question things. And when we start to question things, we move further out of our heart and we can't feel and we can't hear what we're being shown and told.
Yeah, it creates noise, creates clutter.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so to me personally, we need body, mind, and soul in balance, and heart, mind, and soul in balance, so that we stay on purpose and on our true soul path, and then everything just kind of drops into place. If we get into a place of analyzing things, then we're in our heads, and that can lead us off in directions that perhaps aren't the most beneficial for us.
So
But of
then,
course, will always give us learning.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. So a good indicator then, if you're feeling, if you're thinking a lot, if you're overthinking stuff, and you realise that you're just analysing, you're out of balance. So it's a really interesting topic and something I hadn't really given much thought to before, other than the more in balance we are, the better we feel. So if we use our feelings as the gauge, if we're
Yeah,
feeling extremes of anything, we could be out of balance. I mean, certainly if we go negative, or people, like stress or anxiety or whatever, we're out of balance. But also, if we're too euphoric, if we're too,
yeah,
then we're also out of balance. So it's kind of a midpoint of happy, content, relaxed, chilled, as sort of that
yeah.
center point.
Yes, absolutely. A state of being of being in a place of love and happiness
Hmm.
without it being the extreme, as you've just said. Um, so yeah, but balance I think is important for all areas of our life. So, we need to be in a place of balance ourselves, because that then allows us to follow our hearts properly. Um, and when we're in a state of balance, it's a lot easier to see areas of our life which aren't in a state of balance. Um, so whether that's work-life balance, whether that's um, like you were saying, too busy with life and not giving enough time to work if we're working, um, or any other specific areas. You could be doing a lot with your life, but not enough with your family. So,
Hmm.
or not having enough time with friends, or whatever it might be. It's to kind of looking at the whole, the whole of your life and all the areas of your life, so that you just make sure that everything is in balance. Because when you're in a state of balance, everything flows. And so, if life's not flowing for you, it's more than likely that you're not in a state of balance.
So
So
it's whole life
worth checking in
balance,
with yourself. It's holding that balance as well, yeah.
whole
But worth
life
checking in with
balance. Sorry, I'll
whole
cut.
life balance. Yeah, sorry, I misheard you.
Don't worry.
Um, but it's if you're in a state of balance, if you feel centered, heart centered, um, and are listening to what feels right, what resonates with you, then it's a lot easier to get everything else around you in a state of balance. But it's got to start with you first. As with everything, as with any healing of any kind, at any level, it always starts with you.
Hmm.
And when you're in a state of balance as well, you're loving yourself, because you're making sure that that everything is balanced. So you're nurturing yourself at the same time. And I think that's really important to remember as well. When you're in a state of balance, you're doing things that are loving and kind for yourself as well as for others. And when you're not in a state of balance, you're stressed, you're putting yourself under pressure, you're not being so kind to yourself, you're perhaps being very hard on yourself, um, which isn't helpful. And it's just taking that time to go, am I in a state of balance today? Am I in my heart or am I in my head? Am I feeling extremes of emotion? If so, why am I? What is it I need to do to bring myself back
Mm-hmm.
to my center, to feeling calm and in a place where I can deal with anything that comes my way?
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Wow, I'm sure we've given listeners a lot to think about, um, with what we've discussed today.
Either that or confused them completely.
Yeah, one or two. I hope it's not the second thing, listeners.
I know, me too. But it is interesting where the topic went in terms of balance. So yeah, interesting
Yeah,
one. Thank you.
thank you too. Okay then. So we'll leave it there for today. So thank you everybody for listening to us. And it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.